Welcome to another episode of Out from the Horrorbox. I'm your red-faced host, Dom, and in this episode, we will be furthering our look at the latest installment of the Insidious franchise, with the 2023 supernatural horror film directed by Patrick Wilson in his directorial debut, Insidious: The Red Door. We will also rank the entities from each film and the films themselves. So let's go back into the further and discover what is behind the Red Door. In 2018, after the release of Insidious: The Last Key, Blumhouse opted for possibilities to produce future films in the series, and a sequel entered development. Producer Jason Blum had expressed interest in a crossover film with Sinister, saying the following: "I hope so. I want to. We almost did Insidious and Sinister, and I still feel like we might do that. So I think so. I think we're going to cross our worlds at some point. I don't know how yet, but we're going to try." In addition to dropping that bombshell, Blum goes on to talk about the future of the Insidious franchise, confirming that there will be a sixth installment, provided The Last Key earned enough at the box office, which it did, and possibly even a seventh film beyond that. Then, in October 2020, the studio announced that Patrick Wilson would direct and star in the new film, with Scott Teems writing the script based on a story written by Lee Winnell. In February 2022, Wilson confirmed that location scouting had begun, with filming set to begin in spring of that year. The film had a budget of $16 million, and principal photography commenced in August 2022 at the Morris County and Madison locations around New Jersey City. Since we've been waiting for 9 years, let's open the door.
Are you ready?
We're ready to forget the further, once and for all. My brain just been foggy past few years. All I ever wanted was to be a good dad.
Dalton.
Mom. Renee.
Did you ever try and get help?
Nah, I'm just trying to push through.
Why don't you drive Dalton to college? You still have a few weeks before your students show up, right? Just an idea to reconnect. I know it's been tough with you too.
The balance of light and dark is what we're after.
You're in the art school, I take it?
Yeah. You go here too?
Yes.
Draw an experience that defines you.
When I was 10, I was in a coma. But I don't even remember being sick.
Sink deep into your memory and let's see what light can find.
I'm seeing crazy stuff. I think these drawings could be clues from my past.
There's so much you don't know.
And I was too scared to tell you the truth.
Our family has been keeping secrets. They suppressed our memories, but I can still feel something following us.
There's only one way to find out.
I feel like I'm getting closer to something. Or something's getting closer to me.
When you awaken the dead, the further you travel, the riskier your journey will become.
"9 years after the possession of Josh Lambert, the Lamberts stand at the grave of Lorraine Lambert. Dalton reads from Ecclesiastes 3, and after a silence they leave. Dalton, Foster, and Callie, who is now played by Juliana Davis, gets in the car as Josh and Renee talk. They are now divorced, and Josh says his relationship with Dalton has become strained. He attempts to heal things between them by dropping him off at college at Renee's behest, but he declines. Renee and the kids leave, and Josh walks to his car. He sees a man walking away quickly. Josh stops him, asks who he is, and the man says he is Carl, still played by Steve Coulter. Carl says he is an old friend of Lorraine's and leaves. Josh texts Dalton to take him to college. Dalton sees the text and eventually says yes. As Josh is getting ready to leave, a figure appears and disappears in his rear window. The family members are continuing to be played by Patrick Wilson, Rose Byrne, Ty Simpkins, and Andrew Astor, respectively. Josh helps Dalton move in and set up his dormitory room, and they begin to argue after Josh encourages Dalton to attend a fraternity gathering. Josh explains that he has been in a fog over the last 9 years. Before he can elaborate, the door opens and a young woman enters. She introduces herself as Chris. She is played by Sinclair Daniel and explains that there must have been a mix-up with her name being unisex. And Josh leaves. In art class, the art teacher has the class dig deep down and counts to them to begin to draw. Dalton goes into a trance, draws a picture of a door, and as he does this, a clawed hand grabs his arm, cutting him. Dalton takes the drawing back to his dorm and uses the blood on the canvas to color the picture. Josh tries to clear up his foggy memory by getting a CAT scan, and while inside the machine, he accidentally astral projects and sees a spirit in the machine. At home, as he tries memory games to help clear up his mind, he is attacked by the spirit of a man. Josh is knocked into his mother's closet, leading him to discover that his father, who he believed abandoned him when he was young, is Ben Burton. He is played by David Call. Chris convinces Dalton to attend a frat party. While sneaking around the house, Dalton astral projects and sees the ghost of a student that is constantly vomiting. After accidentally going into the further again, Chris shows Dalton a YouTube video of Specs and Tucker, continued to be played by Lee Wynell and Angus Sampson, respectively, explaining how astral projection works, which leads him to a clip of Elise Rainier, still played by Lynn Shay, talking about the further. Dalton attempts to astral project again while Chris watches over his body. She is then attacked by an unseen entity, and her screams alert Dalton, who rushes back to his body and sees the entity as the red-faced demon that tormented him as a child. Chris warns him to stop using his abilities, and Dalton receives a call from his brother Foster, who tells him about a recurring dream he used to have of Josh trying to kill the family. This spurs Dalton's memory, and he finishes his painting, which shows a possessed Josh in front of the red door. A distressed Dalton is pulled into the further, back to when a possessed Josh attacked him in the basement. He tackles Josh as he attempts to kill his younger self, and ends up transported back to the red-faced demon's lair. Josh, while researching his father, discovers that his father killed himself while institutionalized in a mental hospital, and left a note for Lorraine. The note said, "Let it end with me." He goes over to Renee's house. As he probes her for information, she reveals the truth about what happened to their family a decade ago, and that his father also had the ability to astral project, but believed the things he saw were a result of mental illness. Foster shows them a photo of Dalton's painting he texted, and realizes Dalton is in danger. Renee helps Josh to go back into the further to rescue their son. With Dalton trapped in his lair, the demon possesses his body and attempts to kill Chris, but he is stopped when Josh manages to find and free Dalton. The demon chases them through the red door, and Josh stays behind to keep it shut, so Dalton will be safe. Dalton returns to his body and paints over the red door with black paint, which in turn seals the real door and the further permanently. Josh then meets his father's spirit, who guides him back to the living world. Once back, Josh agrees to have dinner with Renee and the kids, hinting at a possible reunion. As he leaves, he unknowingly meets Elisa's spirit, who tells him he has a bright future ahead of him. Josh then drives to Dalton's college, where the father and son reconcile as Dalton presents a painting of Josh carrying a young Dalton out of the further. The light above the now sealed red door begins to flicker. Insidious the Red Door has had a worldwide gross of $72 million. It was initially projected to gross around $23 million in its opening weekend, but after making $15.3 million on its first day, including $5 million from Thursday night previews, estimates were raised to $31 million. It went on to debut to $32.7 million, topping the box office and marking the second best opening weekend in franchise history behind Chapter 2. Rotten Tomatoes has a 37% out of 79 critics reviews, with an average rating of 4.8 out of 10. The audience score for the film sits at 70%, just like a lot of films that have had a wide gap between the two. Rotten Tomatoes consensus reads, earlier installments have had their moments, but behind Insidious the Red Door lies the disappointing denouement of a once frightening franchise. Metacritic assigned the film a score of 44 out of 100 based on 20 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of C+, on an A+ to F scale, while Post-Track reported 72% of filmgoers gave it a positive score. Owen Gleiberman of Variety gave the film a negative review, saying, "For a first-time director, Patrick Wilson doesn't do a bad job, but he's working with tropes that have already been worked to death. It's time to close this Carnival of Souls down." With the success of the film, we may yet get another sequel in the series, and we are definitely getting a spin-off of the series called Thread, an Insidious Tale, and that's going to star Mandy Moore and Kumail Nanjiani. But as of now, we have no release date, and honestly, with the way that the writer's strike is going, and now the Screen Actors going on strike, I think more than likely the spinoff, if it hasn't been completed, it's probably going to be postponed. I kind of feel like they haven't even started on it because I haven't heard too much about it. And if they are going to get a sequel, unfortunately, I think for now we might have to postpone that till once the strike is done and they get what they rightly deserve. Till then, we'll just have to wait. In the 5 films, there are multiple entities that appear, but there are really only 4 main beings that we need to talk about. And I want to go over and rank the entities that haunt the characters of the films. We'll be starting off from my personal worst to the best. This is my opinion, and you have yours. Don't want to change it, but if it does, If it doesn't, meh. So let's drift off into the further. Okay, guys, so I'm starting off with one that may be a little controversial because he's been around for a long while. Since the first one, honestly, I think he's in all of them. And it's not because he's not scary. It's not because of anything more than just we don't know that much about them. We get to see the place they inhabit, and we get to see the way that they act and the way that they are interacting with the world and the characters. But beyond that, we don't really know too much about them, and that's what kind of sucks. And I wish, and hopefully in the future, we do get a film that's more about them, but it's the lipstick face demon or the red fist face demon or whatever you want to call him. He's the demon in the first one. He shows up in the second one again. I think he pops up, and I know for sure he pops up in the third one, and definitely in the fourth one where it's his face. I think there's the third one where his face just pops up out of nowhere, and it's what? And then he is in this latest installment. But I just wish we got a little bit more. I wish we could learn about his backstory. I think he's an interesting enough character where I was going on to the fan wiki for Insidious just to kind of just read to maybe see if they had more of a backstory for some of these characters, for some of the stories than what I read on online from Wikipedia, IMDb, just fan sites here and there. And No, it's like it's just assumptions about like the demon, and it's just kind of upsetting because it's like I really like he's got a pretty cool design. I love that he has like these hooked feet, and he's got like this like darkened like crackling skin, and he's got that red face. He's like he's part of like that great, like that ultimately great jump scare, and it just is a letdown because I just want to know a little bit more about him. I want to know what, and and I'm a big proponent of like we don't have to know everything about a character's background, but if you are giving us this character in all 5 films, and I feel like this film was kind of meant to explore, not meant to, but kind of elaborate more on him to show that he's still there, that he's still trying to get Dalton. Like, we should have got a little bit more about him. Like, Dalton should have explored that a little bit more. And maybe it's just that it's just due to the writing, or maybe it could be the direction. Maybe Patrick Wilson was like, I just want to focus on the family for this one. Like, that's the meat of, like, the first one initially anyways. So I get that, keeping him intentionally vague. But if you're gonna, like you said, if you're going to keep showing him, I feel like we should get a little bit more because, and I'll bring it up later, but, like, we could definitely have gotten that with the latest installment. But, so that's just where I'm starting off. I'd love to put him like as my number 1 because honestly, like I said, it's a great design, and overall like he's menacingly there, and like I love like the idea from the first one where like when she like you can't see him but he's there, and like when Lorraine is talking about like the dream she had, and like just this figure just standing there pointing at Dalton's body. It's really creepy, but ultimately like we know really little about this character. And he's just there to be like, rah, guys. See, I'm scary. Whatever. I wish we got more. Okay, so in our number 3 slot, we have Keyface. Or I don't remember what else they say is the man with no something, like, I don't know, whatever. But he's Keyface. He's got these like keys as his nails, or as the ends of his finger. And he's got no nose, but his mouth is showing. Like, we don't know too much about this thing, like if it's a demon or a spirit. But what I do like is that, I mean, I don't like it, but I like that they elaborated on him and they show that like he has this power where he can turn people's voices on and off. That's pretty cool. I like the design of like the keys and stuff, and then like he like keeps like people's spirits as pets, I guess is what we're led to believe, but he's all about like influencing people to harm other people. That's bad, but for the movies, I mean, like it's crazy that like he has such influence and he's just in this one spot, and it's like you kind of want to know like how he got to be where he is and where he came to be. And that's kind of why I put him a little bit lower too, or lower than the other ones. And well, I only put him higher because like at least we get a little bit more. We get to see a little bit more from him in just the short, in the one film we get to see him in. We get to understand him a little bit. Like what he wants is he just wants more people to enslave and keep. And that's pretty much it. But like he's also wanting people to cause other people harm, like he did with Elisa's dad. Like we find out that he was controlling him and causing him to go around and like kill and kidnap and harm a lot of people. And then he was doing it again with another person who moved into the house. And so I feel like we get a little bit more from him than we did with like the lipstick face demon, which, like I said, just kind of sucks that we don't get more about that guy. Because, like I said, like we have more information about Keyface than we do about him. Like all that guy does is just sit there sharpening his nails. I don't know, he wears some things on his fingers, but like Keyface actually has keys for fingers, and he goes around menacingly like popping out of things and like hurting people. Like, so we know that he has a reason to be other than just like, oh, a plot device to keep Dalton in the further. Like, he's actively searching to possess people and hurt and cause more pain around in that area or in other areas, or maybe he's stuck there, right, in the house because maybe prior to, like, he got trapped there. We don't really learn a lot about him, but we at least know enough to why, like, what he wants. So that's why I put him at the number 3 slot. Okay, so for number 2, I've got The Man Who Can't Breathe. Now, The Man Who Can't Breathe is the entity that is in the 3rd film. He's the one who, when Quinn is trying to call out to her mom, she ends up inadvertently calling out to this guy who's been, I guess, stuck in this apartment building. And we learn kind of like with Keyface, we learn like he's there to like cause spirits to be like to harm, I guess, or we know he wants something. Like, we learn that he was a person that was there and that he couldn't breathe, right, and like that's why he has that mask. And there's not really a lot about him, but I feel like he's just like his design and like his intent, like that he's very malicious. He's able to possess people, like he's able to possess Quinn's body without like giving a hurt, like when her spirit, goes out, and like he's fully able to, like, even though her feet or her legs are healing, he's able to still stand, and he smashes off the cast on her legs, and we know that like it takes a lot for them to finally be able to defeat him, because he's possessing people so he can get them to commit suicide so then he can keep his pet. So it's a little bit like the Keyface, but ultimately he is just like a darker spirit who's there to be malicious, whose only goal is to cause as much harm and damage around him as he can. And then he even tries to do the same thing with Elise, right? He pretends to be Jack, her husband, and tries to get Elise to kill herself. And it's like, and he had killed himself, right? And like he tries to use it as a way to get her to do it. And it's just so kind of messed up. It just takes like the strength of Quinn, like knowing from like her mom and Elise, knowing that she could do it to beat him, that she's able to finally stand up, rip off the respirating mask and and destroy him once and for all. But it's just like how he presents himself. He's very scary. I like when there's a part where he's got Quinn and he's just like sitting there like stroking her like some kind of doll, and it's just very creepy. And I think that's why he works a little bit better, because I think Keyface, at first, like, you'd see it and it's like, oh, that's kind of creepy, it's kind of scary, but like after a while it's like, he does look a little silly. But The Man Who Can't Breathe is like at least somewhat more like despicable, and like you're like, oh yeah, like I wouldn't want to see that like in a dark room. Alright, and sitting pretty at number 1 is The Bride in Black, which we know isn't actually a bride who got killed or anything and like is haunting anyone, but is actually Parker Crane. And he has, I think the reason why I put him at number 1 above all the other ones is because he's the one that over the course of he's there in 3 films, right? And this is kind of what I mean with like the lipstick face demon, is that like over the course of these 3 films, okay, so maybe in the 3rd one we don't really get too much about Parker Crane in that one, but we do understand that he's been trying to get Elise for a while. It's because of what he did, or what she did with Josh, right, when he was a child. He made him, or he made him forget about all the things with astral projecting and forgetting about him and everything, right? So that's why he's trying to get his revenge on Elise. And so then once he does finally possess Josh, the first person he kills is Elise. That's the first person, because that's what he's been trying to do this whole time. And he's been trying to possess Josh for forever. We learn that, and then in the second one, we learn even more about him. We understand why he's been doing the things he did. It's because of his mom. His mom was a horrible person who wanted a daughter, had a son, so she forced him to be a girl. And then when he grew up, he decided he hates women, so he's going to go around killing women, but he does it dressed as an old woman. And see, like, we have a whole background for him. We have more than just like, oh, it's just this dark entity that's just like some of the other entities, like that ghoul guy that just kind of walks into the house, right, and that looks over the baby, or like the twins that are just like there in the first one, or like in like the newer ones with like the red door, like the guy in the machine when Josh goes in to get like a scan. There's just like some random spirit there, right? Like, we know more about Parker Crane. We understand what he's been doing and why he's been doing this and why he's been trying to get Josh. And he takes possession. He actually does these things. Like, yeah, sure, maybe the lipstick face demon does take control of Dalton in the newest one, but it's only for like 5 seconds. And when he does, yeah, he goes after Kristen. Yeah, it's like, okay, that's messed up. Yeah, but as soon as like Josh goes in and starts helping Dalton, he goes back in, and that's when he gets trapped. Parker Crane, he took out Specs, Carl. He took out Specs and Tucker. Because when they broke in and tried to help, he took out Lorraine. He almost took out Renee. And then when he got them cornered, like, he literally was about to kill Dalton to stop him from helping his dad take over or get back control of his body. And it's just, I feel like you get more of an elaboration with this character. We learn more, and we just understand more about why they do the things that they did. And like, they are menacing. Like, they actually hurt people more so than, okay, yeah, like the man who can't breathe, he possesses someone and has them kill themselves, and that's harmful. But the Bride in Black is going around actively destroying a family and killed somebody. He killed Elise, and like, I mean, the key face guy, I mean, he keeps them. He just turns the sound off. And Lipstick Face Demon, what did he do? He just kept Dalton. He had Dalton's body in there for, I think it was like a year? Like, he was in a coma or something, right? That's what Dalton says, it was like a year. And he didn't even take over his body. He had the whole time to. So, I don't know. To me, that's how I would rank them. And like, I don't know necessarily if that's like power wise, but I would say just my ranking of like how I see like them being fleshed out, being like actual characters in this world. It's kind of like okay, so look at, I would compare Insidious franchise to like the Conjuring universe, right? In the Conjuring universe, we got an elaboration on Annabelle in multiple movies. We have an elaboration of the Nun in multiple movies. I think they wanted to do the one guy from The Entity in the second one, the skinny, whatever man, the straggly man. I forgot what it's called. His name was called. I think they wanted to do a spin-off of that, but that never got up and going. But see, I would never say he's better than like the Nun, or like he's better than any of the other characters, because any of the other entities, because we don't get like a further elaboration. Like, what did he do? Scared some kid. Okay, what did he do? Like the Lipstick Face Demon, what did he do? He kidnapped some kid. Okay, the man who can't breathe actively causes people to commit suicide. The Bride in Black kills people. Like, what is the Lipstick Face Demon doing? Nothing. So that's why I guess I would say, if you were to ask me, like of all the main entities that come out in the films, which one is the best? Honestly, The Bride in Black, because they actually said what they were going to do. They want to take over Josh's body. They did it, and they were actively trying to keep it that way. All the other ones were like, yeah, I'm gonna keep trying. And Lipstick Face Demon, he's like, in all of them, like, I've been trying this whole time, and they just keep thwarting me. They keep thwarting me, and I don't know. Maybe that's just me. You let me know, though. Am I wrong? Who do you think is the best? You just go off of like the way that they look? Because if you go off of the way they look, I would say maybe the Man Who Can't Breathe or Lipstick Face Demon. Honestly, Lipstick probably wins just off of the way that they look, but off of like actual like body counts. With this episode and the previous, we have gone over the 5 films in the Insidious series. I will now give my rankings of the films. And this is my personal opinion. You may agree or disagree, just like the previous rankings. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, and yours is just as valuable. So we'll be working our way backwards, again, from least like to most. So we'll just go ahead and start. So starting at the very bottom, the 5th slot, is unfortunately Insidious Chapter 2. I really liked this one when it came out. I mean, obviously it was just the first one and the second one, but I think over time, and I rewatched it again in time for the Red Door, and I was letting it soak in because I was like, I do like it. There's a lot to it because I do love the expansion of the story with the family and the expansion of the story with the bride, but there's just so much that it's just like maybe expanded a little bit further on the further or even like the Lipstick Face Demon, right? Like if they would have expanded that too, like I think, does he even show up? Oh yeah, he does show up in this one. But I wish like we would have got like maybe like they're working against both, right? They're working against him and this the Bride in Black, Parker Crane, and they're trying to like Dalton has to go into the further to get Josh, but like now they're having to race against time because like the demon's trying to get into his body. And maybe you can explain why he wasn't able to take over his body right away. Like maybe there was like something hindering him, like you could have referenced like the Red Door, right? Like maybe the door is locked and like that's what's leading to Dalton's body for the demon, right? Something like that. Like you could have given a little bit more. Like I said, I love the expansion of like Specs and Tucker, right? We get to see a little bit more of them. I like the expansion of, like I said, the family. It's great. I love the introduction of Carl. I think Carl's a great character. I think maybe instead of, you could have kept at least there, like in like helping Specs and Tucker right at the end. We kind of see that. It's kind of referenced, and we never get anything beyond that. But maybe they go into business with Carl, and like the three of them are working together, and like at least is trying to help them use through Carl, right? Like his dice and everything. I wish that like we would have just got a little bit more from some of this other stuff, especially like the further. Like I said, I wish we would have got a little bit more explanation of that and exploring that, but it's just kind of used as a way to explain things in the first one, and just kind of there for them to explain like it doesn't really explain like why Josh got lost. I mean, like, yeah, like okay, maybe the bride was able to like keep him away, but like why was he so lost? I don't know. There's just some things here and there, and maybe they do say it in the movie. Maybe I might have missed that again, but it's just this one just kind of felt like there's just a lot that it's like, oh, like potentially like it could have been really good and it could have been like a solid sequel, but there's just things here and there that falter. I love the idea of like, yeah, he's like super possessed and he's like knocking everyone out and like trying to kill the family. just because like I feel like that's a great step from the first one, like to expand on the character, like that's where they would go. But I think it takes a little too long to kind of for everyone to figure everything out, and for them to kind of finally like decide like to let Dalton go into the further and stuff. I think it would have been a little bit better, like maybe if they would have figured this out towards the beginning, and like the rest of it was like, oh, we got to figure out how to get Josh back, and instead of just more of like this mystery of like who is the bride, like we could have figured that all could have been figured out like they did it kind of simultaneously, but it was kind of like that needed to be solved before they could even figure out how to find Josh. I don't know. That's honestly it is good. Like I said, like none of the Insidious movies are terrible. It's just this one was just like the least of all of them. Next up, at the fourth slot, is Insidious: The Last Key. And the reason why it's there is I do like certain aspects of it. I do like the idea of like exploring Elise's backstory, right, where she came from, and like that she's always seen like these spirits and things. But there's just things here and there where like okay, yeah, her brother, I get like is frustrated that she left him, but why is he still there? If he hated being there, like wouldn't you move too? Wouldn't you leave this place? And I don't know, like the villain, the key face guy, it's not like he's not too great. Like I explained before in the previous like segment, you know, like I get it, like he's trying to like keep these souls as his pets or whatever, but that's about it. And he's using these people. I do like the kind of twist of like the dad was like that wasn't a ghost. It was actually a real physical girl, because he was causing the dad and the guy Garza, who lives there now, to go and kidnap these women and keep them in their house. But there's just a lot about it, like when they're using the it's kind of the same thing with the Insidious Chapter 2, and I didn't bring it up in that one, but where they kind of use it to go back to the past and things. It's not terrible, but it's just kind of weird when like in the second one when she's just like, oh, so that's what that was. It's kind of dumb. Like, and then they kind of do the same thing here where they open the door and then Dalton sees the door open in the first one, and it's supposed to be like that's how the red face demon or like lipstick face demon came into being, like and taking over him. But then it's like, so like it brings up like the same thing where it's like, so why did it take so long for him to like try and possess his body? Like, isn't that the whole point? Is like he wanted to possess the body, because that's what we see later. I don't know. It's just it was good in certain aspects, and expanding the characters, especially Elise. We got a little bit more for her on one last ride right before the series like went off for a while, but it could have been a little bit better. I wish maybe like if it would have been like a showdown between her and the lipstick face demon, right? That would have been a pretty good one, right? Like explain like why he's doing this, where he's been, like where he comes from. Like that would have been a great one here, right? Like to explain him, and like that's what I give like the fault of him, like him as a character, as a villain for. And right here you could have solved it. Maybe like he's been haunting her this whole time, or she knows that he's been haunting or trying to enter into people's bodies before, and I don't know. It's a fine, like I said, they're all fine. This one just, I remember seeing it and I'm just kind of like, okay, that was pretty scary, or that was kind of a cool thing, but overall it was just kind of lackluster. So now we get to our midpoint, the number 3 slot, and that's going to be Insidious: The Red Door. I'm not going to get too much into this because I want to bring it into my final thoughts, but just know that this movie was good. I really liked the family and the expansion of that from over the 9 years since we last saw them. and there's just things here and there where I wish they would have gotten into. There's certain characters that I really liked, and I'm glad that they brought them into the fold. I just wish here and there they would have like maybe talked about this a little bit more, talked about that a little bit more. But overall, this was like I said, it was pretty okay. I mean, especially for the Insidious franchise, I think this was a pretty good one, especially because, like I said, there's certain things about the chapter 2 and the last key that just kind of don't. I think the Red Door did a little bit better, but that's where it sits for me, number 3. Okay, and so in number 2, we got Insidious Chapter 3. Now, when I first saw this one, I was already like, man, of the first 3, this is the best one. And I remember because I got to see it for free. My friend had some like tickets to see it free, and we got there. And there are some things about it that I will say, okay, that's a little ridiculous here and there. Like all of Insidious, there's always things here and there that are ridiculous. But I do like that we got another family. We got to see another story. Sure, it is a prequel, but I think we kind of needed a prequel to. I mean, I would love to have seen an expansion of the story that they kind of were hinting at the end of Chapter 2, but I like that they went back and they showed us how Elise and Specs and Tucker met, and that like Specs and Tucker were like essentially just like fakes and frauds, and like she folds them in and is like, you guys aren't like total fakes and frauds, like you can help me with the job I got to do. And I like the family. I like Quinn. I like the dad and the brother. And I like that, like she tried to contact her mom because she missed her so much. And like the idea of like, she's doing her thing and she's trying to act and move on with her life. But then like she sees this like spook or specter, and that causes her to get injured, and then she's in this place now. It's kind of like a rear window kind of thing where she's stuck in here, and now she's like hearing things and seeing things, and she's trying to convince everyone like these things are happening, these things are real, like and no one's really believing her until Elise comes and like helps her and helps them move on with their life, especially with the mom, like getting to say goodbye to her one more time. I wish we could have seen like maybe Carl a little bit. I think his character's kind of interesting, and we only see him a couple of times, but I wish we could have seen it maybe like one time here. We do. Oh, that's right. Never mind. I'm just like blanking on that one, but I'm glad that he does come back. Like he comes back and he's the catalyst for her to get over her fear of the bride in black. And see, that's how you like. And I'll talk about it in my final thoughts for the Red Door. But that's how you bring back a character like that. Him here is like okay, like yes, your husband like killed himself, but you need to get over it. Like you saved people before, you need to help people again. And it gets her to like, especially like when the ridiculous part is we get to see the lipstick face demon again, kind of as like a tease, and then like. I do like though that the bride in black is kind of what's causing her to like not engage with the further anymore, because it makes sense, right? She helped Josh to shut him out, and then now he has a grudge against her, and anytime she enters the space that he also inhabits, he's going to attack her. But she's able to fend him off, at least for now, till obviously the first one, which is the previous whatever. And I don't know, there's just so much to like about this one. I think this one is really good, and that's why I put it at the second slot. And of course, the number 1 slot, it has to be the very first Insidious. Now, I've talked about when I first saw this, and it was midnight for the premiere, and it was dark coming home and inside my house, and I had to walk inside my house, and my house is super haunted, or at least my family's been super haunted. If you've been watching on TikTok, go on there. I have like stories about the history of my family's haunted house. Anyways, you come home to this like dark house after seeing Insidious the very first time. That jump scare alone, like the whole thing, the atmosphere of that first film, it's literally kind of what helped to kind of usher in like that 2000 teens trend for like getting towards like movies more like It and Hereditary and The Witch, right? We started seeing like, oh, you know, horror can be a little bit more than just like Saw, right? And thanks to James Wan, who, you know, he and Lee Winnell, they gave us Saw, and that gave us through the early 2000s, but of like just torture porn. But now we get Insidious, and that kind of elevates things. This was kind of ushering that kind of in. And I could say it kind of started with this. Like, it didn't fully, like, bring everything to it. Like, it didn't, like, obviously we didn't get It and all, and, like, Hereditary and all those things till in the end of the teens. But, like, this kind of showed, like, oh, you could make a story again where it's more of this build-up, more of this, the atmosphere, the, you know, just the menacing feel. And, like, you know, you use, like, the sounds and, the violin and, like, these songs, like, Tiptoe Through the Tulips. And just the images, you know, jump scares, using jump scares correctly, that kind of thing, you know, really kind of pushed everything forward. And now we're in this era of like, yeah, you know what, we can get better horror films. It doesn't just have to be like murder and gore constantly. I mean, that's part of it, but like we can get something that's just like, you know, like a shot where, or a scene where, you know, Lisa's describing this thing to Specs and he's drawing it, and she's just like telling him, and all we see is the drawing and we don't see anything there, and it's this menacing feeling at the atmosphere. And then we hear like the mom, you know, describe the dream she has, and we kind of cut to it and like we see the shadow. But then, like, it gives us that great jump scare. And I will say, again, I think that's probably the greatest jump scare of all time. Like, it's going to be hard to beat that in, like, a competition if you're, like, comparing jump scares. I think that's going to be one of the hardest ones to overcome, because it's going to be probably everyone's number one. This movie is solid from beginning to... Well, I don't think it's at the end. The ending kind of falls off a little bit. But I think, you know... Hey, ending it where the Bride in Black on a cliffhanger like that, where she takes over Josh's body and kills Elise, who went on to be like your superhero of the franchise. Like, that's kind of crazy to think, like, yeah, like she dies in the first one and like all the other ones have been just trying to bring her back, except for the Red Door. Like, that's a whole nother thing. But this movie is just really good, and it's set up for such a great series. And honestly, I think most people would agree, even if you don't agree with the rest of the rankings, I think the general census will agree that Insidious is probably the best one. You know, we get the introduction to Lamberts, and their dynamic is great. We get this, like I said, like just the atmosphere, the build up, the suspense too. And you can say whatever you want about, oh, jump scares are kind of dumb, but like they do it right in this first film. Like, you could say that for some, especially like The Last Key has some kind of like, whoa, like jump scares. But this one, they knew how to do a jump scare. And honestly, this is probably the best Insidious. Okay, this is the part of the podcast where I get into my final thoughts on the film, and that will be on Insidious the Red Door. So, Insidious the Red Door, I will say, is a pretty solid entry in the franchise. It works by itself. I mean, not entirely by itself. You do have to watch the first two in order to get what... They do explain it, but it does enhance it way more when you've seen the previous two. Like, I would honestly say you do need to watch those two at least. Seeing more of the Lamberts is great. I think for a first-time director, Patrick Wilson, I think he does a pretty good job. I mean, there are so many things that could have gone wrong, and yeah, he probably had a lot of help from some of the people that he's worked with. And you know, as an actor, I've worked with an actor who is a director, and they focus mainly on, you could tell, like they focus mainly on like the acting rather than more stuff with other things. Like they rely heavily on like the cinematographer to know what they're doing, to know what the electrician or the lighting guys and the, you know, everyone else knowing what they're going to be doing. And you can kind of feel that in here, but it's not really a bad thing. Like, he does, I think, with what he was given with the story, he did a pretty good job. Like, he got everybody to know, like, to know where they are as that character would be here now 9 years later. And I think, you know, just the expansion of the story, like I said, I wish they would have got more into the lipstick face demon. That's what really my only gripe is. I just wish they would have expanded that more, because like I feel like it's a great solid character that we could have seen more of, that they just kind of dropped the ball on. But that, like I said, that could just be that they're like, hey, we want to talk about it in another movie. They could have talked about it, like I said, in chapter 2. Though everything they do with him, I think, is okay. Like I said, it's not what I wanted, but kind of, I mean, we kind of got to see a little bit more, and I just wish we would have understood him a little bit better. I do like the thing with the painting. Like, that kind of reminds me a little bit of the Dark Tower, where, you know, a character is able to paint things into existence and able to erase things from existence that he's drawn, right? And I really liked Chris's character. I think she added to something, because a lot of the characters, Dalton and Josh and Renee, they're very somber characters, you know, trying to figure these things out, where she added a lot of levity to the situation, you know, taking Dalton to the frat house, you know, at first kind of being a little scared of his powers, but then kind of coming around when she starts to understand it better and understand that, you know, this is more than just like a demon trying to possess you. It's also like you having to deal with this trauma. And that's one thing too, and I've talked about in other films, is a lot of times these films are about trauma, right? And this one especially is the ramifications of the trauma that happened 9 years ago. And I wish they would have just, it kind of wraps that trauma up a little too early, I feel, for me, like, especially with Foster's character. I wish they would have given him more time. Like, I wish they would have just gone through with being like 2 hours, maybe 2 hours and 2.5 hours. Like, I think Foster's character needed a little bit too, because he kind of is like, yeah, I don't know, I have this dream about Dad, and like it really like freaks me out. And then like he sees a text from Dalton of the dad, a painting of the dad, you know, in mid swing of the hammer, like full of rage. And you know, he wasn't like, they didn't hypnotize him to forget, and she tries to play it off as a dream, but like he was a little bit older. I feel like to him it wasn't just like a dream, like it was like he saw that, like he I feel like he should be more like not wanting the dad involved than Dalton. And like the fact that he just like kind of brings the picture, and then like in the end they just kind of like I get it's because like he helped Dalton, right? In the end, when he went into the further and he helped Dalton when he came back, like, okay, cool. But I just wish maybe they would have got a moment to be like, you know, he's like, I'm sorry, or like, I know what I did, like that wasn't me. Like he says it to Renee, and to me, like, that really helps mend their relationship, because she knows that it wasn't really him, but she sees him. When she sees him, she sees the face of this attacker, this abuser, but she knows it wasn't really him. And like when he even says that too, like he tells her like, that wasn't me, like you need to remember, like that wasn't me, I would never do that. And I feel like he needed to tell this to like Foster and Dalton and explain to them. And for what we get, I think for what we get, it is a pretty good movie. Like, yeah, maybe, like I said, it ends here. Some things are wrapped up a little bit too quickly. But I do like, too, like, the fact that, like, oh, yeah, like, his dad, too, like, the, Patrick Wilson's dad, Josh's dad, you know, he also was an astral projector, and he kind of wanted it to end with him, and, like, that's, like, the mom, I feel like the mom, like, should have told him at least some things, but she just kind of left us out. And then we get to, like, Carl, like, we don't really get to we see him once at the funeral, like, he's just there at the funeral, but he's not, like, there, and he kind of starts the process of Josh, like, being like, like, I remember you, but I don't know who you are, and he's like, yeah, I was your mom's friend, and he just leaves. But I feel like he could have been there to help them a little bit, maybe explain things a little bit better, especially, like, maybe, like, Josh goes to him for help, and he kind of starts to explain things, right? Because we see Dalton, like, looking, or, well, with Chris, they look up, like, Speck and Tucker's their YouTube channel, and from there they're able to understand what astral projection is, and then they watch a video with Elise, and from her talking about the further and explaining to this class, you know, that's what it is, this is where the souls are, and this and that are trapped, and, like, understanding what the further is. I feel like with that too, like, you could have brought Carl in to explain it a little bit better or more for Josh's character, because I think Renee kind of does it, but I don't think I think fine enough. But, like, you could have brought him into it too and be like, let me help you guys, and, like, he undoes the thing so he can get into the further again. I don't know. There's, like I said, there's things here and there about it you can nitpick, but overall, like, it's still a pretty good time. Like, it's not like The Last Key, where I feel like some parts of it are a little bit boring, or Chapter 2 too kind of drags on a little bit some places here and there. But this one, I thought it was pretty good. I thought for what they did, for everything that they done, for trying to bring it back as a series, I think it brought it back. I think we'll probably end up, I mean, after the writer's strike and the actor strike, after this big old strike is done, we may see, you know, another installment of the Insidious franchise. But, you know, we do need to get this resolved, not quickly. It needs to be resolved. And sorry, I'm just throwing my 2 cents in here, but, like, it needs to be resolved in a way that these people are getting paid correctly. These people aren't just like, oh, let's scan your face and I get to use your likeness in perpetuity without, you know, paying you. That's ridiculous. And these studios and executives take advantage constantly, and I just wish, like, it didn't work that way. Like, these people could just get the fair pay, the fair amount of, like, what they deserve, and that's for any union. But getting back, I'm sorry, that was off topic, but yeah, honestly, such a good film. I think I'd just give it 1 thumb up. I don't think I'd give it 2 thumbs up. I'd say, you know, once it's on streaming, watch it. You don't have to go rush to the theaters. I don't think. If you're watching, like, a marathon, I definitely include this. Like, if you want to watch all the Insidious, then yeah, then definitely watch this one too. It's a good, like, to feel like, oh, we're getting back to these characters years later. I like those kinds of things. Like, we kind of get to see, like, we're gonna see with, like, Beetlejuice, we're gonna get to see the characters one more time, just years later. And I think they did a good job with, like, the 9 years later, you know, bringing everybody back. I think Ty Simpkin does a pretty good job, you know. Here and there he's a little, I think he could give a little bit more emotion, but I think he does pretty good for, like, that character. And, you know, Patrick Wilson's great, Rose Byrne is always great. And I think even bringing back, I think, I forgot what the kid's name is that plays Foster, you know, bringing him back, like, that's amazing that you got him back. But honestly, if they are going to continue, I can't wait to see what they do with this. But The Red Door, it's a pretty good one. And that's all for Insidious The Red Door. What'd you think of the film? Which entity tops your list? Is this your new favorite of the franchise? Thank you all for listening, and please subscribe if you like what you hear, and you'll get every new episode downloaded. Have any strange, mysterious, or unexplained stories? Are they fact? Did you craft a story yourself? If you'd like us to read your stories, you can email them to horrorboxpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to read them on the podcast. We would also like to post those stories on our socials, on Instagram or TikTok, @HorrorboxPodcast, where we always have updates and news. One last thing, if you like the podcast and would like to support the podcast, you can buy me a coffee. You can buy me a coffee at coffee.com/horrorboxpodcast, and it'd really help out. We'll see you next time and hear what comes out from the horror box.